So hello and welcome back. Let's look at Intarsia. Okay, so previously with the Doodle Swatch we've had a look at a basic lace pattern, we've applied some beads, and now we're going to talk about Intarsia. Now, Intarsia is a form of colourwork. It's great for doing graphic images in knitwear. So kids' sweaters in particular, you'll see a lot of images in the centre front of the garment. Intarsia is great for that. It's best worked in the flat. I would not attempt to do it in the round because you're only putting the image in part of the knitting. You're not doing it all the way around. You're going to have really kind of unwieldy floats. And with that in mind and unwieldiness, I tend to use butterflies for Intarsia. I'm not going to do a huge amount of Intarsia. It's actually been quite a while since I've done some. But it was the first form of colourwork that I worked with beyond sort of stripes. So I tend to use butterflies. You can get bobbins for Intarsia as well. I would recommend that you don't use full skeins or full cakes for more than one of your sections of yarn for Intarsia. You will just tie yourself in knots if you do that. So I would recommend using butterflies or using Intarsia bobbins to manage the yarn. You're not going to need the full skeins for anything other than your background colour in the majority of cases. There will be exceptions to this, same as anything. But in general terms, particularly if you're using more than two sections of yarn, then you're going to want to be looking at yarn management. So by section, I mean you can have background on either side of your graphic. If it's in the centre of the sweater, and then any colours that you're including in your Intarsia as well. They're kind of like separate sections, separate bits of yarn that you need. Like I say, you're going to be working on the flat, so you can be working across the background, across the colour, and then across the background again for the majority of Intarsia patterns. So each colour needs its own little bit of yarn. So to make a butterfly, you're going to go rock chick on us. Hold the tail of your yarn underneath the fingers that you've bent down, and we're going to wrap the yarn in a figure of 8 around the horns of your little indie rocker, metal rocker, whichever form of rock you're into. Just wind that around until you feel like you've got enough. You can always add in more yarn. It's not a problem. So I'll make that quite a healthy, chunky little butterfly. There we go. And then when you feel like you've got enough, pinch the middle and take at least one of your fingers out, if not both. I tend to take out both, but some people do just the one. Take the working yarn and wrap it around the middle a couple of times. Then we're going to make a loop and flip it over the end of one of the wings of the butterfly and pull it tight. Then we're going to take some scissors, they're left out of shot, and trim that off. So the tail is your working yarn whilst you're actually knitting with it, and this end, the cut end, is just holding the middle of it to help manage it, help manage the yarn. Okay, so see I'm getting low on the green, so we're going to use the Intarsia technique to switch to this kind of mauvey, pinky, purpley colour. So we're going to knit part way across the row and then add in the second colour. Obviously, if you're working from a pattern, you'll change colours where the pattern tells you. It's most likely to come in a chart. In fact, I don't think I've ever seen an Intarsia pattern that didn't have a chart. It'll just indicate where the different changes need to be. I'm just going to knit to around about the middle of of this swatch. This is just a doodle swatch, so it doesn't really matter where you're adding things in, wherever the mood takes you, quite frankly. I'm not following a particular pattern for this, so I don't have a chart. I'm just making it up as I go along, which I mean you can do. It's not a problem. And particularly when you're just swatching things out, getting ideas for things that you might want to put into projects in the future. So if you had an idea for something that you wanted to put on the front of a standard stockinette sweater, get a flat pattern, and I'd get a bit of graph paper, work out your stitches and draw into the squares the colours that you want to change where. So it's quite easy to create your own chart. Okay, so that'll do for now. So we're going to take one of our butterflies and we're going to pull out a little bit of a working yarn and just pop that between our fingers at the back, hold it in place. I'm going to bring it underneath the green that we've been working with so that it twists the two yarns together. This is why I recommend not using full skeins, because you can get in a little bit of a muddle. So I put it underneath the green. This is now my working yarn, and I'm going to knit to the end of the row with this new colour. If you're somebody who weaves in your ends as you go, you can absolutely do that. I probably would if I was working on a garment. I'm not bothering today because it's a swatch. Every time you need a little bit more yarn, you can just pull out of the centre of that butterfly a little bit more yarn. Okay, so we have that first colour change in place around about the middle of the swatch. See, the next row we're working back, so we're working in pearl. Now we're going to be working back to join in this green yarn again. Now we're going to work it in a little bit further over this way. And this is why I wouldn't recommend working Intarsia in the round. You're going to have to go so far back on yourself with the green yarn to get to where you want it to be that you just can end up with long tails all over the place, and it's just easier to do it in the flat. And if you can find a way to do Intarsia in the round, by all means go for it, but because you're dropping the yarn as you go across, it's always going to be on like the wrong side for where you need it to be when you come back round the other way. So we're going to purl back, but we're doing garter on the edge of this swatch just to try and control a bit of the curl that stockinette does. So I'm just doing a 3 garter stitch, or 3 stitch garter border, and then we're going to purl back to where we want the green added in. Okay, so I'm just going to bring the green 1 stitch further over to what's currently my right. So I'm going to knit to just before, the stitch before I want that green to start being worked. So just as we did before, we're going to be twisting the two colours together. The reason we twist the colours together is actually to help prevent holes. So we've got our tail coming over that way. This is our working green yarn. I'm going to bring it underneath the mauve, hold it in place, and then keep working back the other way. A few stitches, so we just caught the end there of that bit of mauve. So we're just going to work a few stitches. And we're going to add in our next butterfly of the mauve. So I'm just going to pull out a little bit of the working yarn. You sometimes find that your butterflies bunch up a little bit, but it just takes a little bit of teasing and it'll come out. It's not a problem. Some of the bobbins may prevent this, but I've never used them, mostly because I don't have any. There we go, so there we've got some working length. So we're going to put a tail at the back, and effectively we're coming from underneath the green yarn, so we want our ball of yarn or cake of yarn or whatever it is that you're working with to come over the top. I mean, if you're weaving in tails, this is going to make more of a difference, but you get the idea. So we'll worry about that tail later. There's my working yarn in front because we're purling, and we're going to purl away to the other end of the rope. Okay, so now we've got 2 changes of colour. We're going to work our way back to where we want to change back to the green. So again, we're going to come over 1 stitch this way. So we're going to knit to that point using our butterfly. So we're just approaching that green there, so we're going to knit all the way over, and we're going to include that first green stitch there. Just going to snug up that mauve tail. Then we're going to bring our green up from underneath the mauve so that we're catching that yarn, twisting them together. Then you can do an extra twist for added security if you want to bring it under again. Lock it in a bit more. Again, we're moving the green 1 stitch over into the mauve. Snug up where that tail is. Find the working length. And bring the working length of the mauve under the green. Give it another twist for security. And work our way across the row. So there we have our first couple of rows of Intarsia in place, and we've untangled our bits of yarn. The shorter you can keep your bobbins and butterflies when you're not actively using them, the less tangled you're going to get. Also, the further apart the colour changes are, the less tangled you're going to get. So now we're ready for our purl row, and the technique is the same as for the front, for the right side row, for the knit row, aside from obviously you're purling the majority of them. Again, because it's a swatch, we're just going to knit the first 3 stitches, and then we're going to purl back to where we want that colour change to be. So we bring the new colour up from below, bring it over the old colour, give it an extra twist by going back under for added security. And carry on working. new colour up from below. Keeping the tail out of the way if you can. Give it another twist for security. I like to snug that twist up to just behind the work before I make the next stitch. And then we carry on to the end of the row. Okay, so we can start to see the movement of the colours. We're getting a bit of a diagonal line appearing with the green across the fabric. I'm going to work a few more rows and then I'll show you how it looks. Okay, so I've worked a few more rows. As you can see, I've started to bring this side in. I'm just taking this side straight up. And the only reason that you can do the straight edges in Intarsia is because of that twisting. So if we have a look at the back, you can see how the two colours are intertwined and holding each other in place. So we're not getting any holes, we're not getting gaps, we're not getting the fabric separating. It would create like a buttonhole kind of thing if you didn't twist them on the straight edges. So yeah, so that's Intarsia. It's great for, as I say, graphic images, changing colour mid-row, creating diagonal lines, putting circles in. Lots of kids' sweaters will have it. I mean, I grew up in the 80s and was a teenager in the 90s, so Intarsia was everywhere. So yeah, that's how you do it. That's how it looks. That's how it turns out. I will see you next time, but until then, you might be interested in this video here. Until then, happy crafting and bye for now.